In this video, I'm going to share with you 5 tips on how you can cultivate your own fig trees in pots so you've got the best chance in getting a nice bumper crop. So it must be about 4 or 5 years ago since we took this pollen from the fig tree where we used to live. That tree actually has been dug up since then and they flattened the land. The pollens that I took now are, well, the sole survivors from that original tree. And this is the first year that we've managed to actually get an edible fig. The last 3 years, it grew very little figs that never ripened, remained hard, and then they would just fall off. This is normal with fruit trees. When they're not established and they're young, they're going to drop a lot of fruit, especially if they're not healthy enough and strong enough to be able to develop it fully. Developing fruit for a plant obviously uses a lot of energy and resources. Also, I had my figs in smaller pots and the soil, I'm a cheapskate. I used some soil to get them rooted, and that could have been a contributing factor. Maybe if I'd have gave them bigger pots, better quality soil a year or two ago, maybe I'd have got a better fig much quicker. But we was moving house, we had a lot on, and I just let them do their thing in the smaller pots that I had them in. But it's coming on since I've potted it up this year, and I'm training it to grow as an espalier. It's coming on lovely, and we can see lots of new little figs developing on this tree. If you want to grow figs in pots or containers, well, these tips are going to be of great benefit. First, you want to be making sure you've got the right pot size. Bigger is better. The bigger your pot, the more fruit your tree is going to be able to produce. A pot around 15 to 24 inches in diameter is really going to suit your needs. I have mine at the minute in about a 6-gallon pot, but I would put it in a bigger pot if I were able, but I just don't know how long I'm going to be living here. Next year I might move, or in 2 years' time, and I don't want to be carrying a huge pot around. I've already got my lemon tree and my lime tree. Hopefully I don't get a hernia in the process, and that might be something that you might have to consider if you're living in a colder climate or you move around. You don't want to be damaging yourself having to shift these pots in every winter if your winters are quite severe and cold. Here the winters are nothing to worry about, just get a light frost sometimes in the night, which the fig trees can deal with quite adequately. But if I have to move in a couple of years' time, I'll be able to carry that quite easy. Maybe next year I'll pot this up to a slightly larger size, but at the minute it's doing quite well and it's pretty happy. Make sure also that your pots have good drainage so that the water can drain freely. Next, you want to make sure that you've got some good quality soil that holds moisture but drains freely. Get some nice organic matter in there if you've got a compost bin or a worm bin, and the figs are really going to appreciate that. Third thing you want to be doing is positioning it in a place where it gets plenty of sunlight. A south-facing spot is ideal. If you do live in a colder climate and you're worried that the winters can be a bit severe, you could try and grow your fig tree against a nice solid wall, a south-facing wall, and train it up the wall like an espalier, so that then in the night the wall can retain a little bit of that heat through the day, staving off any frost and protecting it from any harsh winds. And if it gets too cold, well, it's in a pot, you could disconnect it and whip it inside into a garage or something like that. So in summary, make sure that your fig tree is at least getting 6 to 8 hours of good, strong, direct sunlight every day. Fourth tip is make sure that you're watering regularly, especially during the growing season. Figs like a good drink. When they're growing figs, then they're pumping up that fruit with juice. They're going to be drinking a lot more water. Don't allow them to get dry, otherwise the fruit will suffer, the fruit will drop and dry up because, well, the plant is in emergency mode and it's not going to focus on growing a fruit when it's struggling even to survive. Obviously in winter they're not going to need as much water when they've dropped their leaves and they're dormant. but especially during that growing season, make sure they're getting enough water. Here in Cordoba, it's getting hot now. I have to water my plants every day, but obviously it all depends on your climate. Stick your hands in the soil, brush your hands in the soil, stick your finger in there and see if is it moist. You'll get an idea then on how often you need to water your plant. Maybe you only need to water it a couple of times a week. I'm on a daily watering schedule, otherwise they'll just dry out. And now the fifth tip is making sure that your trees get adequate fertilizer. Me, I make up my own fertilizer. I use a combination of worm castings and the juice that I get from them castings. Also, I make my own weed fertilizer, which is fantastic, and I rarely need anything else, and then a little dusting of wood ash now and again. I'm fertilizing my trees every week. It's a diluted fertilizer, it's not as intense. I think they really appreciate that weekly feed. You got to think that plants in pots, they're not like the plants in the ground that can really stretch out their root systems, looking for nutrients. They're limited, so they rely solely on us to keep putting that nutrition into the pot. And especially when you get any heavy rains, it's going to wash the nutrition out of the pot. We need to be constantly putting that back in there. So what I've been doing now, I've been giving mine a weekly feed of a diluted weed fertilizer mix. And when I've got that video out on how you can make your own weed fertilizer, then make sure you check that link out. It's fantastic stuff. You never have to buy fertilizer basically again. I've been getting so many blueberries this year. The figs are doing great. My strawberries have been producing prolifically. It's brilliant stuff. And then getting a little bit of organic matter on the soil surface when you're mulching, like worm castings, really helps to feed the soil microbes further, and it can all be done for free. We'll talk more about that in the future. If you're using a bulk commercial fertilizer and making it up as you go along is a bit more daunting, then just be sure to follow the instructions on the back of the packet or the bottle so you don't go over the top. Also, as a bonus tip, when it comes to pruning, many people recommend pruning deciduous trees like figs, your pruners, apples and pears in winter. But if you want your tree to remain at a reasonable size, then we don't want to be pruning in winter, but we actually want to be pruning about the mid of the summer solstice, which is about the end of June, to keep our trees at a respectable size so we can pick our fruit. And I've been talking about this in other videos, and I'll put a link in for you so you can watch it next if you like. But that's going to keep our tree at a reasonable size. We're going to get less unwieldy growth, and we're going to get fruit that we can actually reach. But that's a whole nother subject. I'll lock a link in the description where we can talk further on that subject. You know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to enjoy this fig, and maybe you're interested in watching this little video that's just popped up on the left. Until next time guys, I'll see you later.